Okay, camera rolling.
Slate it.
Hi. Today we're going to learn how to bake bread. I want to show you how simple it is to bake bread. We're going to make the most simple, basic whole wheat loaf using just flour and water and yeast. Baking bread can be fun, and the bread you bake will be delicious and nutritious. To start, we're going to take 1 3/4 cups of warm water. Now, make sure that the water isn't too hot, because if the water is too hot, it will kill the yeast. Next, 1 tablespoon of yeast. Stir it around and let it sit for a minute while the yeast dissolves. Let's take this opportunity to oil our bread pan. Just a little bit of oil, and make sure that you cover all the surfaces of the bread pan. This will keep the bread from sticking while it's baking. Now the yeast is dissolved, and we're ready to add our flour. Now, you can buy your flour in the store, or you can buy your wheat and grind your own flour. We're going to add 3 cups of flour. Stir each cup in as you pour it in. Now, this is the most basic bread recipe. Once you become experienced, you can add many other things to make your bread even tastier. You can add molasses, or honey, or seeds, or wheat germ. Use your imagination. Now, the consistency of the dough will vary sometimes depending on the consistency of the flour. So you might have to add a little bit more flour to get a nice, stiff dough that's ready to knead. That's ready to knead. Now, take another little bit of flour. We'll sprinkle it on our breadboard. And a little bit more on our hands to keep the dough from sticking to our hands. Spread the flour on the breadboard, and then dump out the dough. Now we're going to add 1 more cup of flour to our dough, and knead that in. Now, don't be afraid of your dough. Enjoy it and knead it. Use the heels of your hands. If you feel the dough sticking to your fingers, add a little bit more flour. You should knead your dough for about 2 minutes. When you finish kneading your dough, shape it into a loaf. And place the loaf gently into your bread pan. Now the dough is ready to rise. Cover the dough with a cloth to keep it from getting a draft, and place it in a warm place. Now, this is very important that it go in a warm place, because if you put it in a cool place, it will take a very, very, very long time for it to rise. Now, we just have to wait for the dough to rise. We wait until it doubles in size. It should take about an hour. Preheat your oven to 375 degrees. Incidentally, it doesn't take any more fuel to cook 3 or 4 loaves than it does to cook one. Well, our hour has gone by, and let's see how our bread's doing. Well, it's doubled in size, and it's ready to bake. We're going to bake it for 40 minutes in a 375-degree oven. Now, we're going to bake it for 40 minutes, and let's set our timer. I can't wait. There's the bell. I guess our 40 minutes are up. Let's see how our bread's doing. Looks good. Now, to make sure it's done, we tap it on the bottom. A nice hollow sound, it's done. If you don't get that hollow sound, put it back in the oven for a few minutes. Now we're going to place it on the cooling rack and let it cool for a while. It'll cut better and taste better if it just cools a little bit, if you can wait. Well, I know that bread looks a little bit lonely standing there all by itself. Usually when I bake bread, I bake 3 or 4 loaves. Perhaps the first time you try to bake bread, you should just bake 1 loaf too. But later, bake lots. You can freeze it, or you can give it away as gifts to your friends, or trade it for the things you need, or even sell it. Now, let's recapitulate. For our basic whole wheat bread, we want to use 4 cups of flour to 1 3/4 cups of water with 1 tablespoon of yeast dissolved in it. We let it rise in a warm place. We bake it for 40 minutes at 375 degrees. Well, I guess we're ready to cut into this one. Fresh baked bread. Would you like a piece?